Hare Krishna. Welcome to another evening in the lives of the Vaisnava saints. My name is Chaturatma Das. Before I tell you who we're going to speak about tonight, I want to tell you a tad of a story, how I arrived at this. I was looking at two different personalities that I thought I might speak about this evening, and I was undecided about which of the two. And so in the process of studying and looking, my wife called me and said, dinner's ready. And she had made some very nice risotto. Those of you that may not be familiar, of course, my wife is an excellent cook. So, at any rate, she was apologetic because she said it's very, very spicy. And she doesn't generally make spicy stuff. So I said, no, I'm sure it's fine. So I sat down to eat, and sure enough, it was incredibly spicy. And I said, well, that's okay, because very, very spicy is South Indian. And one of the choices I had tonight was Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who hails from South India. So that's how I arrived at speaking this evening about Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And the risotto was very good, by the way. All right, so I'd like to open with a prayer. The prayer is from Bhakti-Ratnakara, which is a very, very wonderful book, which I'll give a little background and explanation on a little bit later in this. Bande Sri Bhatta Gopalam Dvijendram Vyenakatmajam Sri Chaitanya Prabhu Seva Niyuktam Cha Nijalaye. I offer my respectful obeisance to Venkat Bhatta's son, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who is the king of the Brahmanas. In his own home, he personally served Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sanatana Prema Paripulataram Sri Rupa Shakyena Vilakshikalhinam Nanami Radha Radha Ramanika Jivanam Gopal Bhattam Bhajatam Abhishtadam. I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Gopal Goswami. He was plunged in spiritual love for Srila Sanatana Goswami. He had wonderful friendship with Srila Rupa Goswami. The deity Sri Radha Raman was his very life. He fulfilled the devotees' desires. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave his supreme blessings to most of the very important works that we find biographies of the Vaishnavas in. Particularly, we find, however, that in the vast ocean of Vaishnava works, there is very, very little information. For instance, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, in the Kavi Karnapur's writings, Gaura Gonadesha Dipika, in the writings of Lochan Das Thakur, Chaitanya Mangala, very little, if any, information about the pastimes and life of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Fortunately, there was one devotee by the name of Narhari Sakar. And Narhari Sakar wrote a wonderful book called Sri Bhakti-Ratnakara. The Sri Bhakti-Ratnakara, you might say, is the second generation of Chaitanya literatures. First generation being Chaitanya Mangala, Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavana Das Thakur, Chaitanya Mangala, of course, being the work of Lochan Das Thakur, and of course Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami's Chaitanya Charitamrita. The next wave of devotees of Lord Chaitanya, the second generation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers, if you will, includes Narhari Sakar. And he has written this book called Bhakti-Ratnakara. And Bhakti-Ratnakara deals with much of the pastimes of the second generation of Lord Chaitanya's devotees, but also deals predominantly with a lot of the stories of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, since he was instrumental in the lives of these three persons. So this is the direction that we're going to go tonight. I'd like to take a moment and welcome the people that are in the chat room this evening. We've got Bluegrass, who's joined us again from Salem. Bluegrass, nice to have you back with us. Thank you for returning. And Rob has come back from Scotland. I won't even embarrass myself with my bad brogue. And Damien108, thank you also. Nice to have you with us too. Our usual format, for those of you that may not be familiar, is that I'll speak about the particular individuals for about an hour, and then we'll take some questions. If you have questions about the subject we've discussed, or if you have general topic questions about Krishna consciousness, we'll do our best to answer those. So, as we mentioned, Narhari Sakar, the author of Bhakti-Ratnakara, and of course then there's also the writings of Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur we spoke about when we first began this series, and his most famous book is Prema Vilas. The most famous book about him, at least one of my favorites, is Prema Vilas. Prema Vilas deals not only with Narottam, but a lot with Srinivas and Shamananda and some of the other second-generation devotees. So there's a very nice description given in this Bhakti-Ratnakara, and I'm going to slip right over here. There we go. The father of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Venkata Bhatta, had two brothers. One was Tirumala, and Tirumala and Venkata had a third brother, Prabhupada, who became Prabhupada Saraswati, also a very prominent acharya in the line of the Lord. So, well, what we have is this wonderful South Indian family. Wonderful Brahmins family from South India, very dedicated to the worship of the Lord, and very, very nice Pukka Brahmins, very, very well settled. And in this way, there's one young boy in the family who takes his birth, and his name is Gopal. And of course the family name is Bhatta, so Gopal Bhatta. Gopal Bhatta. There's a nice description given in Bhakti-Ratnakara of the birth and the youth, the appearance of Gopal. Gopal's body was handsome and glorious in every way. His complexion was glorious like a champaka flower. He charmed every heart. His face was like a lotus flower. His eyes were large. Glorious tilak adorned his nose, eyebrow, and forehead. How graceful were his ears, his cheeks, and his neck. How broad were his chest and his arms. How slender was his waist. How graceful were his feet, legs, and knees. His garments and ornaments were beyond compare. Moment after moment, Gopal became more and more handsome and glorious. Seeing the wonderful glory of Gopal, who could remain peaceful? So this is a description of the appearance, of the physical attributes of Gopal. And in this way, he went through his youth. As he became old enough to be educated, his uncle, Prabhupada Saraswati, who was a highly learned and educated Brahmana, took up the process and the necessity of educating and training the boy. And there's, as we find in many scenarios, there's nice description given of how he adapted very quickly and was very quickly able to find out these qualities of education and to develop skills and abilities and understanding the different shastras and like that. There's a mention that in 1510, when Gopal Bhatta would have been around 7 or 8 years old, give or take a little, depending upon what date you take as his birth, whether you take it at 1500 or at 1503. But at any rate, at around 1510, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was touring South India. Now one might question if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya, is living happily in Jagannath Puri, what need does he have to travel? It was a general practice amongst sadhus, saintly persons, to travel widely, go to all the different places of pilgrimage. And the purpose in going to these different places of pilgrimage was, of course, to gain enlightenment, to experience the devotional ecstasies there. Now, what need does Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have to gain enlightenment or to experience devotional ecstasies? Rather, in the case of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his purpose in traveling was to give his mercy to all the different living entities, all the conditioned souls. This was a very, very wonderful purpose in Lord Chaitanya's taking sannyas. Because as a grihastha, as a householder living in Navadvip and tutoring to some students and all, he was not taken so seriously. And as we know from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, some of his students were committing offenses against him in their mentality towards him. So for this purpose he took sannyas, because at that time in Indian history sannyasis were still very much respected, very much honored. So in this way he began his travels. Now generally sannyasis travel all throughout the different holy places, with the exception of during the Kartik season. Well, actually during the greater Chaturmasya season. Chaturmasya means that there's the 4 months of the rainy season. Of course, anybody that has had the opportunity to travel in India or be in India during the rainy season knows it's difficult to do anything. There's so much rain, and it's so frequent and everywhere. So generally what the sadhus would do is they would stay in one place during this time, and they would perform different types of austerities. Now, of course, a sadhu is already very austere. So this time that they would actually stay there and perform greater austerities. And take a moment and welcome, as we do to all the chat rooms, welcome our tech, Abai, who's come in to Sabat for Uddhava. Uddhava, thank you for getting us started. Abai, welcome. Everyone can appreciate Abai's expertise here. So we're all set and ready to go. So now we've got these sannyasis, they're traveling around in this way. So what happened is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happened to be in South India when the rainy season began. This meant that for 4 months he was not going to travel. So during this 4-month period, then Lord Chaitanya stayed in one place. And where is that place that he stayed? He stayed in the home of Vyankata Bhatta and his brothers Tirumala and Prabhupada Saraswati, and the young boy Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Got that little box in there.
Oh.
I don't know, you're not able to see it for some reason. Okay, there we go. Just indicate to you there. Just a technical problem, a little glitch there, excuse me. So, during this time, Vyankata Bhatta, of course, was very happy to have Lord Chaitanya stay. Any grihastha is very happy to have a sadhu stay with them. And especially an unexpected resident, an unexpected guest. It mentions, Chanakya Pandit mentions in his writings, that the unexpected guest is to be understood to be non-different than the Lord. That he is manifested without any call, and therefore should be treated in a very nice way. So what to speak of if that unexpected guest actually is the Lord? This was the case. Gopal Bhatta was, Vyankata Bhatta, his father, was very happy to have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he brought him in and received the Lord very nicely, washed Lord Chaitanya's feet, as was the custom. A traveling mendicant would come to your home, you would sit them down and wash their feet. Now, you know, a lot of times people that approach Krishna consciousness, to become informed about Krishna consciousness, they're curious about this foot washing thing. But actually, most of us, I'm sure many of you out there listening, probably the greater majority, myself included, we come from a Christian background. And this was a very common practice, and someone would come to your house who would wash their feet. The reason being, of course, that traveling through the desert, I think particularly of the times of Jesus' travels, and he would come to this one's home or that one's home, and they would wash his feet and greet him like that. So part of this is as a matter of cleanliness, because the traveler has been out on the dusty road with just sandals on or barefoot, whichever the case is, and so the feet are very dirty, so cleaning the feet. The second thing is a sign of offering of humility on the part of the host, that they're offering what they have and serving the individual who's come to their home. And then the third thing, of course, is a matter of cooling the person, because if you get your feet rinsed off with nice refreshing water, you feel very relieved. Oh, I've been traveling it down like that. So, and actually I can remember back when I was a young brahmachari that we used to do this at the Sunday feast. When guests would come, we would have a little foot wash there at the door. Now, of course, the primary reason in this was that this was back in the days of the late 60s and early 70s, and the guests coming, many of them were less than attentive in their hygiene. To be polite, they stank. So mostly the odor was coming from the feet. So therefore we would wash their feet, dry them, and they would think they were being received very nicely and be very appreciative. And in the meantime, we were making it fresher so that the temple room didn't smell so badly when they all came in. So at any rate, this is part of the custom. So this is the way Vyankata Bhatta received Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And of course, his young son, Gopal Bhatta, was there, and he would assist. Here, Pita, here's the water jug, and the father would pour, and then here's the towel, and the father would dry like that. And then it mentions that after doing so, Vyankata Bhatta then took the water that had washed the Lord's feet and distributed it, sprinkled it on the heads of all of his family members. So in this way, they not only respected the Lord by receiving him into their home, but they respected him by placing themselves at his feet, by taking the water that had washed his feet on their head. Now, there's a mention that Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Gopal Bhatta, the young boy, actually was very enthusiastic, and he drank some of this water. Now, this might seem a little difficult for some of our listeners to understand, but the fact is that this was a symbol of his great appreciation for this wonderful saintly person. So, in this way, the Lord was received very nicely, and all the family members came, and then the Lord spoke a bit like that. There's a little description here that I'd like to read. This tells about when he was first coming. That when he was first coming to Sri Rangam, this was, I forgot to mention that, my apologies. Sri Rangam is the place where Vyankata Bhatta and his father and brothers lived. Sri Rangam is a wonderful, wonderful place in South India. The Ranganath deity resides there. Actually, this Ranganath deity has been worshipped for millennia. There's a long, long, long history to this deity. And it's one of the four holy places that considered that every proper Hindu, every proper religious person of the Varnashram system, of the Vedic teaching, should follow the pilgrimage to these four places. One of those is Sri Rangam. So there's a description when Lord Chaitanya first came to Sri Rangam. It says that when Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu entered the temple of Ranganath and began chanting Hare Krishna in the Kirtan, his song was far sweeter to the Lord than millions of Gandharvas. Everyone was stunned and astonished, and the hairs on the body stood on end. The divine figure of the Lord was wonderful to behold, and his bodily radiance was dazzling. From his lotus eyes, torrents of showers came in Krishna Prema. The Brahmins at Rangaji wondered, is he a god? Such a manifestation of ecstasy is very difficult for a man. Again and again, everyone was requested, please chant the holy name, Haribo, Haribo. And he was drowning in tears that poured from his lotus eyes. As the Lord fell before the deities like a tree that had been cut down, everyone was appreciating his golden form and saying it was as if a mountain of gold had fallen to the earth. Sri Vyankata Bhatta detected in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the symptoms of a Mahapurush, a great personality, and could not contain himself as he saw the Lord performing his Sankirtan. His heart leaped with joy as it became filled with bhakti. Pushing his way through the crowd, he joined the Kirtan party and lost himself in dancing and singing the holy name of Hari with the Lord. When the Lord regained his external consciousness and steadied himself, Vyankata fell at his lotus feet and said to him, "Oh, my dear Lord, please give us your blessings." So in this way, Vyankata then invited him to his home, and they received him in this wonderful manner in which the Lord was very happy to give his kindness to all the different devotees. Yeah, for some reason it's stuck there, that okay thing. Yeah, there we go. Okay. If I indicate like that, that'll be our cue. All right. So when Lord Chaitanya was in a private setting with his devotees, as opposed to when Lord Chaitanya was in a public setting, his external demeanor was different. We all know the times that when Lord Chaitanya in his younger days in Navadvip would be dressed as the personality of Godhead, or someone would call him the Lord, he would close his ears and say, Vishnu, Vishnu, Vishnu. He didn't want to hear this. But in the confidence of Srivas Pandit's home during the Mahaprakash Leela, he sat right on the altar to show his personality, his own personality, and manifested all the different divine forms of the Lord according to the devotees. So, in the same way, we see here that this wonderful opportunity the Lord shared with the family of Venkata Bhatta. Now, there was another time where the Lord's feet were washed, and that was during the Gundisha Marjana. Gundisha Marjana is a time in Jagannath Puri, just before Lord Jagannath leaves his temple for Rath Yatra to go to his summer residence, as the expression is. They have a grand cleaning of this temple, Gundisha Marjana, and it means the pastime of cleaning the temple. And of course, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, as well as our own Srila Prabhupada, have used this to give very clear analogies of how this cleansing of the temple for the Lord to come and reside there is seen as the cleansing of the devotee's heart for the Lord to come and reside in our heart as well. A very nice example is given there. So during that time, one Bengali devotee, Lord Chaitanya referred to him Sarup Damodar, one of your Bengali boys. Excuse me. Sarup Damodar was from Bengal, and so Lord Chaitanya placed all the Bengali devotees under Sarup Damodar's care. And whenever they would do something, he would always criticize them. Sarup Damodar, one of your Bengalis has done such and such. So during that time, Lord Chaitanya was busy cleaning the main throne of Lord Jagannath, and one of the Bengali devotees came up behind him and poured water over his feet. And then as the water washed off of his feet, he collected that water and then drank some of that water. So Lord Chaitanya was not very happy about this activity. He was very unhappy that publicly in this way, while serving the Lord, he has been worshipped. So he chastised that devotee through Sarup Damodar. In the same way, though, we see that when Venkata Bhatta brought the Lord into his home, the Lord very willingly allowed them to wash his feet and to take that foot wash, that Charnamrita, and place it on their heads, and in the case of Gopal, to actually drink some of it. So this is the difference in the sweet mood that the Lord gave in a private setting to the family members of Gopal Bhatta and his father and uncles. I want to take a second here and welcome Karuna from North Carolina and Mahamantra. Braj Bilas has joined us again from Jacksonville. Hare Krishna, Braj Bilas. Nice to have you with us here. And Mahamantra, if you don't mind, you can just jot a little something in the chat room. Let us know where you're joining from. And we'll continue on. So as I mentioned, for these 4 months of the Chaturmasya season, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed there with Venkata Bhatta and his family. During that time, Venkata Bhatta arranged for Gopal Bhatta to very nicely serve the Lord. He would bring the Lord his meals, he would wash the Lord's room, he would do his laundry, things like this that are seen to be the activities of a servant of a menial position. But he was very, very happy to do these activities, because this is the way one shows a mood of surrender to a more advanced personality. And in this case, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could be more advanced? How does that advanced personality reciprocate? Well, we can see that sometimes they just accept that service, become very proud, very puffed up, sometimes even arrogant. But the actual duty of a person receiving that service from a junior is to give knowledge. And this is what arrangement was there that you can imagine Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is staying in your home for 4 months. There's going to be a couple of discourses. The Lord's going to say 1 or 2 things which are worth listening to. So in this way, Gopal Bhatta was hearing Krishna Katha on a daily basis. On a daily basis, he was getting to hear the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He was getting to hear the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's the wonderful, famous debate, if you will, between Vyankata Bhatt and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regarding the mood of awe and reverence that Vyankata Bhatta, that they worship in South India, and the sweeter Madhurya mood that Lord Chaitanya was bringing. And they were debating back and forth, Lord Chaitanya teasing, how is it that if this position is so exalted, you're Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is hankering, you become a mere cowherd damsel in Braj. So in this way, back and forth they were going, and of course in the ultimate analysis, Vyankata Bhatta accepted defeat at the hand of Lord Chaitanya by his wonderful. So in this way, the family exchanges were going on. Sometimes Gopal would bring the prasadam. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would tease him. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would be kind of funny with him in that way. Sometimes he would embarrass him in front of the other family members and say something or do something. So in this way, Gopal Bhatta daily for 4 months was allowed to engage in the service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We can just imagine, if you'll stop and think for a moment, each of you that are out there listening or that are either in our chat room, to the time when you were 7 or 8 years old. And at that age of 7 or 8 years old, imagine the opportunity to daily, for 4 months, get to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Imagine the reciprocation of mercy that would come from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to you. And this is the blessing that was bestowed upon Gopal Bhatta. This is the actual blessing that allowed him the mercy that later manifested in his pastimes in Vrindavan. So, time is a wicked and cruel master. And the 4 months of the rainy season came to an end. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to make his arrangements to move on. I don't think it is possible to describe the pitiful, just heartbreaking scene of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explaining to Vyankata Bhatta he was now going to leave. We can just imagine the family has had the Lord residing in their home for 4 months. They've been personally serving him. They've been personally taking care of his every need and receiving instruction from him, listening to him every day. And then the Lord says, okay, now it's time for me to go. Just the intensity of separation they were feeling was too much. So in this way, they actually begged the Lord, no, you must stay at least 2 more weeks. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed, all right, 2 more weeks. I'll stay 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks, 14 days, a fortnight. So very short time by any recognition. So in due course of time, it did happen and it did take place. And in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued on with his journey and left the family of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Now, having been instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's a mention in the Bhakti-Ratnakara of the fact that the study, the real training period of Gopal Bhatta began. And I'd like to read a few verses here that highlight this mood, if you will. So, keeping in mind, now, actually, of course, Gopal Bhatta wanted to go with the Lord. Gopal wanted to immediately just stop everything and travel with the Lord. This was his desire. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him that, you should stay here. You should stay here for some time. And, in due course of time, you'll be able to leave and go to Vrindavan, and then everything will become very clear to you. So it mentions that Gopal Bhatta was always intoxicated with love for Lord Gauranga. And in every situation, Gopal was victorious in preaching the truth, the devotional service, as given to him by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whenever he glorified Lord Gora, he easily broke all the Mayavadi theories into new. Righteous people praised Gopal Bhatta. How did he become so learned, they would question. Some people would say, Sri Prabhupada has carefully taught him, and therefore he has quickly gained knowledge. By his uncle Prabhupadanda's mercy, Gopal became learned in all the scriptures. There is no one like Gopal. Other people would say, Prabhupada is very glorious. Everyone knows him by the learned title Saraswati. Even in a dream, he does not stop thinking of his master, Sri Chaitanya, who is the personality of Godhead. And this is a very nice prayer that is quoted from the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which we'll speak a little bit later about. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who pleased Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami, and who was a disciple of Lord Chaitanya's dear devotee, Srila Prabhupada Saraswati, first collected the scriptural quotes that comprise this book, Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas. So in this way, Sanatana Goswami, we'll find later, is giving some praise to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And we'd like to take a moment and appreciate our guests who have joined. Mahamantra is with us. We mentioned Braj Bilash. Bishwa Shri is joining us. And boy, I'm going to say your name wrong again. Abba, you have any idea how to say Mauricio's name? Mauricio. Mauricio, I hope I have not butchered your name too badly.
Or Mauricio.
Mauricio. You've been with us, this is your third or fourth week, and maybe I'll get it right. But thank you very much for joining us. Tonight we are speaking, for those of you who have just joined recently, we are speaking tonight about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And Kivan has also just joined us. So this is very nice. So in any way, it goes on to discuss how he was instructed by Prabhupada Saraswati in a great example of renunciation, and how Prabhupada Saraswati and Gopal Bhatta's hearts were filled with joy in the company of each other because they had one common topic, and that topic was the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gopal Bhatta Goswami was always very, very happy when he would see his mother and father, and he was always engaged in serving them. He did not marry, and he would always engage himself in the service of his mother and father. One day, a learned Brahmin came to Vyankata Bhatta, and he said to him, O learned Brahmin, Vyankata, your son is glorious in every way. Never have I seen a child with such devotion. How wonderful is the love and service that he offers to you and your wife. Hearing these words, Vyankata Bhatta became joyful at heart. From early childhood, Gopal's actions had been like that. So in other words, Gopal Bhatta had great affection for his parents. And why not? His parents were wonderful devotees. This is the example we see in the lives of so many of these Vaishnavacharyas that we've spoken about over the last few weeks, that they came from very good devotee families. So in this way, it begins to speak about the great fortune of Gopal Bhatta's mother and father, and that they had surrendered their hearts to the very life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and had been reciprocated with by the Lord in the form of this wonderful son, Gopal Bhatta. So, in this way, Gopal Bhatta's parents became very elderly, and in due course of time they were approaching the time of departure from this world. They gave a very important instruction to their son, one that had already been confirmed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Gopal Bhatta wanted to leave and travel with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he told him, you stay and serve your parents, and in due course of time you will come to Vrindavan. So as his parents were winding up their time on this earth, they gave one instruction: after our departure, you please go to Vrindavan, and there great happiness will be bestowed upon you. So in this way, the parents passed from this world, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami began to make his way to Vrindavan. Everywhere in India at that time, travel was done by foot. Maybe by bullock cart, but there were certainly no buses, no taxis, no airplanes. So things took quite a bit of time. So from South India, he made his way to Vrindavan. many wonderful adventures and stories he must have encountered along the way. But as I mentioned, very few of the literatures give much detail about his life, except for the main points. So in this way he arrived in Vrindavan. Gopal Bhatta got there at the same time as many of the other famous residents of Vrindavan were there. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj, like that. So he met, first of all, Rupa and Sanatan. And then Rupa and Sanatan took him and introduced him to Bhugarbha and Lokanath. Lokanath and Bhugarbha Goswami, we'll speak about them one of these evenings, but Lokanath and Bhugarbha were the first Goswamis in Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya sent the two of them there before the 6 Goswamis arrived. And they arrived in Vrindavan. There was nothing but forest everywhere. Of course, how would they find? They had their deities, and they had the holy name, and they would go from place to place calling out the names of Krishna's pastimes, and then the Lord would reveal to them, this is where this place happened, this is where that place happened. And in this way they began to uncover the different places. They were taken then and introduced to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, to Kashishwar Mishra. These were all devotees residing there in Vrindavan that Gopal Bhatta was taken to by Rupa and Sanatana and introduced around like that. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by this point had returned to Jagannath Puri. And he was in Jagannath Puri and he was curious, how is Gopal Bhatta Goswami doing? Of course, he knew that Gopal Bhatta had gone to Vrindavan by now, either by, letters going back and forth. Excuse me. This happens all the time, I don't know what it is. Either by letters going back and forth, or the fact that he is a super soul in the heart of all devotees. So he wrote to Rupa Goswami and he inquired, how is Gopal Bhatta doing now that he's there in Vrindavan? Rupa Goswami wrote back to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's doing very nicely, everything is fine, he's arrived, he's settled, we've introduced him, he's studying like that. So at this time, Lord Chaitanya sent some instructions. He sent some gifts and some instructions to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So first, let's deal with the gifts. First of all, he sent him a little wooden seat called a choki. And it's a little wooden seat that the Lord would sit on when he would perform his japa, or put his tilak on, whatever. And then he sent him his dhoti. And then he sent his dhoti to him. And both of those items are currently in the treasury of the Radha Raman temple, which we'll talk about a little bit later once Radha Raman makes his appearance into the pastime. He hasn't come yet. So the Lord sent these two things to Gopal Bhatta, who was very happy to receive them. And he gave Gopal Bhatta the following instructions. Don't become dependent on security or a permanent place of residence. Wander from forest to forest throughout Vrindavan. Secondly, spend as much time assisting Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatan in compiling books and thoroughly studying these books. So this was the particular instruction that the Lord gave to him. Sent him his dhoti, sent him his little wooden seat, and told him not to become attached to a comfortable place in a permanent spot, simply to wander the forest of Vrindavan, and to assist Rupa and Sanatan in putting together books and studying the Shastras. So for some time, Gopal Bhatta Goswami continued and resided in Vrindavan in this way. And then he decided he wanted to go to the Gandaki River. The Gandaki River is the source of the Shalagram Shilas. Now, those of you who are listening that do not know, Shalagram Shila is the external form, from our vision, of a stone that comes from the holy Gandaki River. And this is actually always eternally the form of Lord Vishnu. And Kivan is just quickly asking here a question. Shastra. Shastra means scripture. If for those of you that are joining a little late, if you have a question about a particular word, please feel free to jump in. In general, what we'll do is run through a story, and then at the top of the hour, we'll open up for questions and all. But Shastra means scripture, Kevan. So, in any way, he went to the Gandaki River with the intention of collecting some shalagrams. Now, I've had the opportunity to travel from Vrindavana to Rishikesh. It's a 10-hour bus ride. Then from Rishikesh up into the Himalayas to Badrinath. I've had that opportunity as well. That's another 10-hour bus ride. So there's 20 hours by bus. Then from Badrinath into Nepal, and then from Nepal into the Gandaki. This is a much, much longer journey. Now, and as I mentioned, there's no buses. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami is walking all of this. So he walked all the way into the Gandaki region. And the system for collecting these shalagrams for worshipping is that one goes to the Gandaki River and stands in the river with their pot or their cloth or whatever and offers prayers, wanting to be able to worship the Lord in a particular form. Even before doing that, Gopal Bhatta had arrived just with his water pot and put his water pot into the water to get some water from the Gandaki and bathe, and 12 shalagrams came into the water pot. So this way he saw them and he thought, oh, put them out, I just wanted to get water for bathing. So he put the pot back together, and the same 12 shalagrams came into the water pot again. So again, he put them out just to take water for bathing, and took the pot to cleanse, and the 12 shalagrams came back. So understanding that 3 times something happens, this is very auspicious, he accepted that these were the forms of the Lord that he would worship. So he set them to the side, took his bath in the Gandaki, and then after performing some chanting and some appreciation of the holy place and some pilgrimage around the area like that, then he returned to Vrindavan. So he walked all the way back down to the border of Nepal, and then from Nepal into bordering Himalaya and then India, and then down to Rishikesh, and then on into Vrindavan like that. Very, very long distance. Must have taken months. So he got back to Vrindavan, and he began to worship these shalagrams. And in the process of worshiping these shalagrams, he became very, very happy and filled with joy. Now, there's a very interesting story here, because it should be understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not limited by any type of external circumstance. That the Lord can appear in any particular form that he wants to, according to the desire of the devotee. So in this way, it was actually on Nrsinga's appearance day. There was one very wealthy businessman, very wealthy Vaishya, that was going to the different Goswamis in Vrindavan and giving gifts and charity on the appearance day of Nrsinga. Went to Rupa Goswami, who had his Govindaji deity, gave some cloth and some necklaces and some crown and like that. Went to Sanatan Goswami, who had his Madan Mohan, gave some cloth and some necklaces and crowns and like that. And then he went to Gopal Bhatta, and he gave the same thing. Now here again, for those of you that are not familiar, the Shalagram Shila form of the Lord is generally seen as a round stone. So where do you put a necklace? Where do you put a kurta? Where do you put dhoti? You might be able to set a crown. So in this way he received all these presents that were intended to be used to glorify the Lord. And he looked at his deity, his 12 shalagrams, and says, how will I do this? So in his mind, he offered the following prayer. O Lord, you are very merciful, and you fulfill the desires of all devotees. I wish to serve you in your full form. Please fulfill my desire. So in this way, as I mentioned, it was Nrsinga's appearance day. He continued his fasting until dusk when Nrsinga arrived, took a bit of prasadam, put his deities to bed, as was his habit. He kept them in a basket and covered them with a cloth, and then began to chant. The Goswamis would chant all the time. They would sleep very little. 2, maybe 3 hours out of 24 they would spend sleeping. So mostly they would chant and doze off a little bit. Actually, many of us, probably some of you listening, are familiar with dozing off while chanting. But this is not the kind of dozing off that the 6 Goswamis did. one of the other seminars held on another night of the week is with Mahatma Prabhu, who speaks about proper chanting. I'm sure he could speak about this point of dozing off. So this dozing off that the Goswamis did during their chanting is different than our dozing off. And in that state, they would rest a bit. So when Gopal Bhatta arose the next morning, this is the morning after Nrsimha Chaturdasi, the appearance day of Sri Nrsimhadev, he went to the Jamuna, took his bath, came back, put on his tilak, said his morning Gayatri, performed all the different ceremonies, and then went to wake his deities. And when he took the cloth off to wake them, the main Hologram, there were 12. Generally, when you have multiple Holograms, you worship one as the prominent deity. This is the custom. So if you have 10 or 12, or in some people's case 50 or 100, then one of them is accepted as the main deity, the Ishtadev, and that one is worshipped, receives all the worship for everyone. So this one particular deity, Damodar, was his main deity, and the Damodar Shila had opened up, and the beautiful deity of, where's the camera? The beautiful deity of Radha had appeared from this Hologram. And it is said that Radha embodied all the beauty of the different Vrindavan deities. So in this way, it was very, very ecstatic, so happy. He began to take care and do the worship, and then he quickly went to Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami and collected them and brought them to see, get the darshan. You can just imagine. Yeah, I mean, not to minimize this in any way, but imagine you're very close friends with 3-4 devotees, and you're engaged in some nice seva, and the Lord manifests before you in a deity form. Well, immediately, with great enthusiasm, you go to your friends. With great excitement, you bring them forward, and they begin to appreciate your good fortune. And in this way, there was much appreciation of the mercy that the Lord had bestowed on Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So in this way, Radha manifested himself. Now, Gopal Bhatta Goswami had received one instruction from his father, Vyankata Bhatta, before he passed away. And that instruction was, you should always worship Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, in due course of time, after worshipping Radha for some time, Radha is the form of Krishna. So he began to think, I'm not being chaste to the instruction of my father. But the Lord has manifested to me in this way. How can I resolve this? So I'll tell you a very interesting story, how this is resolved by the personality of Godhead himself. This story is told in the Bhakti-Ratnakara. Here we go. In the Bhakti-Ratnakara, it tells the story of how Lord Chaitanya resolved this dilemma in the mind of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. It mentions that, remembering the command of his father to directly serve Lord Gaurachandra, Gopal Bhatta could not be peaceful in his mind, thinking of this instruction. He floated in an ocean of tears that flowed from his eyes, both from ecstasy of remembering the Lord and from disappointment in not properly following the instructions of the Lord. In this way, he affectionately gazed upon the form of Radha. And then the most amazing thing happened. The form of Radha transformed itself into the form of Sri Gaurasundar, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then, becoming completely amazed at seeing this, then the form of Lord Chaitanya manifested himself back into the form of Radharamanji. So this is seen as a very instructive pastime, because it explains for those that are not clear how Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is non-different than Sri Krishna himself. That he is the personality of Godhead, and he manifested in this pastime with Gopal Bhatta for the exact purpose of making this a very clear understanding. It says that Gopal Bhatta, upon seeing this, fell back to the ground and cried out, "What have I seen? What wonder have I seen?" The hairs on Gopal Bhatta's body stood erect. He floated in the tears that now flowed from his eyes in torrents. He sang the glories of both Radharaman and of Lord Sri Gaurasundar. Moment after moment, he found that Radha fulfilled the desires of his heart in such a way that no other could. So in this way, this wonderful pastime took place. And Gopal Bhatta became completely satisfied that he was being chased in the instruction of his father, and at the same time he was enjoying the wonderful mercy of Radha manifesting before him. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that we would speak about the treasury of Radha. As with any deity, there's always some treasury that is their special collection. In the early days of Vrindavan, when the Goswamis were there, it's not like the Vrindavan we know now with massive, huge temples and gates and ways to protect the deity behind stone doors and wooden locked entrances and all. None of these things were built yet. Govindaji isn't built for another 27 years. Madan Mohan isn't built for another 24 years, I think it is. Radharamanji temple is not built at this time. So these things have not yet started. So the Goswamis, what they would do, particularly this area where Gopal Bhatta was staying, there was a lake. And if you go to Vrindavan and take pilgrimage in the Radharaman temple, they'll show you where that pond was. It's dried up now and it's been built upon. But what they would do is they would take their deities and put them in a boat and float them out to the middle of this body of water, so they would be protected at night. And then they would sit around the body of water, not just sitting there, but with bows and arrows. Because keep in mind, not only were there dacoits, but there were wild animals in Vrindavan at this time. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. But these were creatures that lived in the forest there in Vrindavan. So they protected with bows and arrows. So one of the things in the treasury of Radharaman are the actual bows and arrows that the 6 Goswamis used to use to protect their deities. This is true. If you go to the Radharaman temple and look just to the front where the deities are, to the right-hand side of the viewer, or to the left-hand side of the deities, is an area that's set back and is locked and secured, and that's the treasury of Radharaman. Also in that treasury is the dhoti that was worn by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also in that treasury is the wooden seat. Those two items are brought out twice a year, on Gaur Purnima and on the appearance day of Radharaman, and they're placed on the altar for the darshan of the residents. So if you ever want to see Lord Chaitanya's personal dhoti or his personal seat, you go to Radharamanji Mandir, and you go there on Radharamanji's appearance day, which is in the late May, Nrsimha Chaturdashi time, or you go there during the time of Gaur Purnima, and you'll see these items. So also in the treasury, of course, many of the wonderful jewels and silver and gold. If you go to, there's actually Radharaman. If you go to Google and type in Radharaman, you'll get their website for that temple. And they have beautiful pictures of Radharaman on silver elephants and in a chariot and all these different magnificent things they have in their treasury that they bring out. So this is the treasury of Radharaman. Now, one of the specific instructions given... Wow, it's 9 o'clock. Those of you that are waiting for the top of the hour has come and it's about to go, because we've got a couple of more things to say about Gopal Bhatta, and then we'll open up for questions later, so just please bear with us. One of the specific instructions given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Gopal Bhatta was to write a book on the spiritual rituals that should be followed by grihastas. And this book is called the Satkriya Sardipika. And Gopal Bhatta writes that he sought to give valuable guidance on marriage and spiritual life for couples and their children. So in this book, the Satkriya Sardipika, in this book are the different samskaras, particularly dealing with 10. Samskaras means purificatory activity. For those of us from a Christian background, it would be like confirmation ceremony, or it would be like the baptism. So there are 10 different ceremonies such as this in the Vaisnava tradition called samskaras, which purify the living entity from the conditioning of the material world that we're born in. First time one eats grains, or the first time the baby comes out into the open, to go to the temple, for instance, or the first hair cutting, when one begins to study the scriptures through school, things like this. So these are all explained very detailedly in this book of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's. And there are different priests around our ISKCON society that have studied these things and become knowledgeable of how to perform these activities. And they're important activities, not because they're mandatory to go back to Godhead, but because they assist supplementally in the process of purifying our consciousness and focusing our energy away from the body and towards more spiritual principles. Another of the books that he was encouraged to write was the Samskar Dipika, which is the same types of guidelines, but as they apply to sannyasis, for taking their vows of renunciation and how to behave as a sannyasi, what activities to perform, and what activities to avoid in that way. So he also, some of the other writings of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he did an introduction to Jiva Goswami's Satsandarbha. He did a commentary on the Krishna Karnamrita, and he edited the Hari Bhakti Vilas of Sanatana Goswami. And there's one really, really nice story about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Excuse me, just before I started. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami was traveling one time in Rishikesh. Rishikesh, some of you may be aware, is at the foothills of the Himalayas. And from Rishikesh, the first place of pilgrimage into the Himalayas is Badrinath. And you can travel to Badrinath up there. So at any rate, he was in Rishikesh, and he was wandering about from holy place to holy place. And a very, very, very horrible storm hit. Very intense, heavy rains, and Gopal Bhatta had no shelter. So he was traveling. And one Brahmin happened to see this sadhu, this saintly person, is in the rain with no shelter, and he invited him into his home. And he brought him in and very nicely received him. The wife prepared nice prasadam for him, and the husband served him very nicely. Now the husband and wife had no child. They had desired a child, but had no child. So they requested Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Guruji, you blessed our home. We do have one request of you. Please give us your mercy that we may conceive a child. We want to raise a nice devotee, but we've been able to do so. So Gopal Bhatta said, yes. He said, may you have a son who is a great devotee of Lord Krishna. This was the blessing he gave. And in return, the father said, if such a thing takes place, then I will send him to you to be your disciple. Oh, very nice, someone comes to your home, I'll give you a blessing, oh, thank you very much, like that. So the rain stopped, and Gopal Bhatta continued on and returned to Vrindavan. Life goes on. 10 years pass. After that 10 years, one day, Gopal Bhatta is gone to the Jamuna, and when he's at the Jamuna, either getting some water, taking his bath, or whatever, and he returns to his bhajan kutir, and when he returns, he finds there's a young boy standing at his door. And he sees the young boy there, and he says, excuse me, may I help you? Are you looking for someone? He says, are you Gopal Bhatta Goswami? Yes, that is my name. Who are you? Said, my father was given a blessing by you that I would be born. And then my father in return said that he would send me to be your servant. And here I am. Now I'm 10 years old, and my father has sent me to assist you in your seva here in Vrindavan. Well, very, very nice. So this devotee, his name was Gopinath. So Gopal Bhatta accepted him as his disciple and trained Gopinath in all the shastras, placed him in the care of different devotees to learn different things. Keep in mind, Vrindavan at this point is a hubbub of spiritual energy. Krishnadas Kaviraj is writing Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Rupa Goswami is putting out the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Ocean, and he's writing the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction. And these different devotees are writing all kinds of literatures, and they're uncovering all the holy places in Vrindavan. And so in this way, Gopinath got all this type of association. So in due course of time, Gopal Bhatta became concerned that I'm an elderly, and I have no family, no connection. Who will look after Radha Raman when I pass away? So he said to his disciple, Gopinath, he said, Gopinath, I would like you to take the Grihastha ashram, to get married, and anyway, to get married, and then once you get married, then you can have children, and they can become the successive caretakers of Radha Raman. And so Gopinath, as is mentioned in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, says one may not neglect the order of the spiritual master, except for one order. If the spiritual master requests the brahmachari to please take married life, the brahmachari can politely refuse. So in this way, Gopinath said, Dear Guruji, he said, I don't desire to marry, but I have 2 brothers and 3 nephews, and they are already married. So in this way, if you want, I can bring them, you can initiate them, and they can take responsibility for caring for Radha Raman. So this was Damodar, Harinath, Mathuranath, and Harinam. These are the lines. They became disciples of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And these disciples were then initiated and had their children. And in this way, this became the families that care for the Radha Raman deity. And to this day, 17 generations later, those same family lines can be traced to the current managers of the Radha Raman temple. Very, very nice in this way. So the last story that we'll tell here, since we're getting along in time here, is the last story we'll speak about is Jiva Goswami introducing Srinivas to Gopal Bhatta Goswami, because Srinivas became the most prominent disciple of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. We remember the story of Srinivas, to make it very short, because we've spoken of it before, how he arrived in Vrindavan after he had wanted to be instructed in the Bhagavatam by Gadadhar Pandit, who, of course, Gadadhar Pandit passed away. And then he desired to go to Vrindavan, and he would see Rupa Goswami and be trained by Rupa Goswami, who passed away. And then from there he would go to seek out the shelter of Sanatana Goswami and receive training from him, who passed away. And in this way, he came to Jiva Goswami. And so Jiva Goswami instructed him that I will introduce you to Gopal Bhatta. So in this way, Srinivas actually reveals to Jiva Goswami that, yes, actually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to me in a dream and told me that I would take initiation from Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So Jiva Goswami went and introduced him to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Gopal Bhatta Goswami in turn revealed that he had received an instruction in a dream from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that Srinivas will come and you will initiate Srinivas. So in this way, Srinivas was initiated by Gopal Bhatta Goswami in front of the Radha Raman deity. And when he was initiated by Gopal Bhatta Goswami said to him, may you attain perfection by the mercy of Radha Raman. And then he placed him in the care of Jiva Goswami, and then we know the story continues from there. Jiva Goswami and Shyamananda and Narottam Das Thakur and their travels like that. So we'll wind up here. It's nice to note that Gopal Bhatta Goswami lived until the age of 85 and lived in Vrindavan the majority of his life. And I'd like to close with a very nice verse here. This is the last verse in the first wave or first chapter of the Bhakti-Ratnakara. And this is, as I mentioned, written by Narahari Shakar. Some may describe some of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's glories, but no one can describe them all. And with that, we'll finish for tonight's discussion and reading of the pastimes of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. If any of you out there have any questions, Kevan, I see that you mentioned that you're new to Krishna consciousness and had a couple of questions there. If you'd like to ask anything, or if Braj Vilas, you have anything. Bluegrass, feel free to jump in there. You've been attentive throughout it. Anyone that has anything they'd like to add or a question about, please feel free to take this opportunity to let us know in the chat room there. Once you type in questions there, in case some people are just in the chat room and don't have their sound on, then we can let them know that. Yeah. Is that better for you? Yeah. There we go. Okay. Very quiet crew out there tonight. Nobody's got anything to say. Braj Vilas here. These which Mahaprabhu carved are the deities that Mahaprabhu carved still present in Sri Rangam. Braj Vilas, I believe that is correct, but I'm not completely sure on that. I know that there are different deities in Vrindavan that were carved by the particular Goswamis, and I know that there are some specific deities which Mahaprabhu gave to his disciples. But I'll ask my dear friend Dhruva Maharaj about that, and then when I see you next time, Braj Vilas, or if you want to email me here at the temple since you're just in Jacksonville, then I'll be happy to find that information out. But if I answered it at this point in time, it would be sheer speculation. Dasi is asking how Lord Chaitanya carved deities with a chisel. Well, I'll have to ask that also. Actually, the personality of Godhead, of course, can carve deities just by his mind, just by the idea of presenting the deity from his heart and having it manifest. So, but I think Dasi's not actually on. Karuna is asking a very nice question here. Can we develop a personal relationship with these Vaishnava saints? Karuna, let me just answer that in this way. Every relationship that we develop in the process of devotional service is personal, because it deals with us and it deals with who we're developing that relationship with. Now, can we get personal reciprocation? That may not exactly be what we find. It may be that when someone like we're discussing today, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, it's not really practical to expect that Gopal Bhatta Goswami is going to give me his blessings. I mean, ultimately I get his blessings through the Parampara. Ultimately I get his blessings through studying the works that he has written. But as far as developing a one-on-one with Gopal Bhatta Goswami, this isn't likely. This just isn't the way the system works. But we can seek that inspiration from these devotees. We can seek that appreciation of their activities, and that personally enlivens our devotional service. And by that personal enlivenment, that constitutes our reciprocal relationship with these Vaishnava saints. And this is why I have in the beginning of these lectures and continue to stress why it is so important that we understand what is our heritage. What is our background that this line of teachings is coming from? How do we understand about the lives of these personalities? Because when we understand about the lives of these personalities, then we can actually begin to appreciate many of the different activities of the devotees and how they will enliven our devotional service. So that would be my answer to your question, Karuna. I hope that satisfies you. I hope that's sufficient. If anyone else has anything they'd like to add or that they'd like to question, feel free to. We're running up on 9:15, which probably isn't too late for some of you out there on the West Coast. I'm sure for Rob there in Scotland, this must be about 3 in the morning. He must just be getting up from Mangal Arti. Karuna is in the same time zone that we are, and probably looking at Mangal Arti not too far around the corner. So, at any rate, if no one else has any comments or questions, we're going. Oh, Bluegrass has popped in here. Can you recommend any bios written by devotees from the early movement here in the U.S.? I find those types of bios inspiring. Well, one thing I can certainly recommend is there's some early books. If you go to Krishna.com and pull up some of their book sections. There's one called the Vrindavana Days, which is a very early reminiscence by one of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples, Hari Griva, who's no longer with us, he's passed away, about the devotees' early times in India. There's also, Tamal Krishna Maharaj has a wonderful book called Servant of the Servant, which describes and talks a lot about the early days of ISKCON. There's also a very, very nice book that Vyasaki Prabhu has written about the early days of Radha Damodar. There's two or three that come to mind, Bluegrass, but if you go to Krishna.com and look around, I'm sure you'll find more, and you can ask them about them as well. And I'll do a little bit of further investigation for some more and have them ready for you next week. All right? So that should be a good resource for you. Krishna.com can give you some information upon that, all right? And I guess that will wrap it up for tonight. So, once again, we thank you very much for joining us for another evening in the lives of the Vaishnava Acharyas. Hare Krishna.